Hello friends, I welcome you all in this new edition of news coverage and analysis from the Hindu newspaper dated 7th March 2019. So what all are we going to cover is detailed here in this slide. You can pause the video and note down if you wish. So let's start with the first article. This is quite an interesting one. It says coming soon, the Indian Museum of Natural History. We do not have this kind of museum till date. From dinosaur fossils to pre-human skull, India is a home to vast treasury of geological and paleontological specimen that contains a wealth of scientific information about the planet and its history. But these rare specimens are scattered in different labs all over the country. So, to better conserve this prehistoric heritage, the government is planning to house them in one place and it will be named as Earth Museum. This is important for your pre. This museum will be modeled on the American Museum of Natural History or the Smithsonian Museum in US. This also you should remember. American Museum of Natural History or Smithsonian Museum of United States. The museum, which will be set up as a public-private partnership, would be located somewhere in Delhi NCR. The PSA, that is Principal Scientific Advisor to Prime Minister, led the meeting of the Prime Minister's Science, Technology and Innovation Advisory Council. This is quite an interesting one. You should remember. Last November, where the need for such a museum was endorsed. The meeting of experts from US, UK and South Korea to discuss the practical aspect of developing and maintaining such museum is scheduled to be held in New Delhi in last week of April. India has a rich geological history and fossil dated back to the breaking of the Gondwana supercontinent nearly 150 million years ago. You all must have read this in geography. Prominent fossil includes the jaw of an extinct ape, Gigantopithecus bilaspurensis, Bilaspurensis dinosaur eggs so large they were mistaken for cannonball, and the skeleton of horned carnivore Rajasaurus narmadensis or the royal Narmada dinosaur. So that's why we have got such a rich heritage and we must have a museum where we at one particular place we could see how our history developed. Now the next article, ministry plugs loophole that allows plastic waste import. This news had come in January also, and the Hindu had reported that backdoor entry is taken by importers to bring plastic waste through China in the name of sedge. Now government has changed that rule. So what the news says, government has plugged the loophole that allowed the import of plastic waste into India for processing. Solid plastic waste has been prohibited from the import into the country, including the special economic zone. Earlier it was allowed to be imported in special economic zone. Now government has plugged this loophole and has put a complete blanket ban. And the export oriented unit, that is EOU, the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, has said. The ministry said in order to made public on Wednesday. The change in the law was part of the Hazardous and Other Waste Management Transboundary Movement Amendment Rule 2009. This is also important for your pre. The influx of PET bottle has quadrupled from 2017 to 2018. The Delhi-based environmental organization Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyay Smriti Manch had pointed out in January. Indian firms are importing plastic scrap from China, Italy, Japan and Malawi for recycling. The imports of PET bottle scraps and flakes has increased from 12,000 tons in financial year 16-17 to 48,000 tons in 17-18, growing at the rate of 290%. India has already imported 25,000 metric ton in the first 3 months of the financial year 1819, a note by the organization had revealed. India consumes about 13 million tons of plastic and recycle only about 4 million and recycle only about 4 million tons. To incentivize domestic plastic recycling unit, the government had banned the import of plastic waste, particularly PET bottles, in 2015. In 2016, the amendment allowed such import as long as they were carried out by the agency situated in SEZ, and from here actually it was coming into our country, and that's what was the loophole that was pointed out by the Hindu, and now a complete blanket ban is imposed. The next article, ISRO French agency seal agreement on maritime security. This is important for the pre as well as mains. National Space Agency ISRO and the French counterpart CNES, you should remember, on Wednesday sealed an agreement to set up a joint maritime surveillance system in the country in May. The two nations will explore putting up a constellation of low Earth orbiting satellite that will identify and track the movement of ships globally, and in particular those moving in Indian Ocean, where France has its Reunion Island. So couple of information for you. Before that, they will initially share data from their present space system and develop new algorithm to analyze them, according to Paris-based National Center for Space Studies. This is what the agency has said. CNES ISRO agreement intend to supply an operational system for detecting, identifying, and tracking ship in Indian Ocean. It also provides for a maritime surveillance center to be set up in India in May this year, sharing the capacity to process existing satellite data and joint development of the associated algorithm. And the next phase of the program, studies for an orbital infrastructure to be operated jointly by the two countries. CNES is working with its industry partner and with ISRO to devise most appropriate technical solution. Two agencies have put up two climate and ocean weather monitoring satellite, that is called Meghatropic in 2011 and Saral Altica in 2013, that are considered a model. This is also quite an important news for your pre. This fleet will be augmented with launch of Ocean Sat 3 Argos mission in 2020, along with a joint infrared Earth or observation satellite. So many informations here. Basically, the prime focus is this one, that they will have a surveillance come tracking, ship tracking system, and then they will have other facilities like identifying, detecting, identifying, and tracking the ship to support this part. And then to start with, first both the countries will share whatever data they have, or the so that the best algorithm is devised, which will work on the which would work based on the data that would be available through the satellite that would be launched from OceanSat 3 and onwards. Now, poorest of the poor and uneducated women left behind, ICDS. The important point here is ICDS. The government Integrated Child Development Scheme, ICDS, provides a package of 6 services at Anganwadi and child care centers to young children, pregnant women, and lactating mother. Those who are breastfeeding. These services include supplementary nutrition, referral services, immunization, health checkup, preschool, non-formal education, and health and nutrition education. Integrated Child Development Program is a governmental program in India which provides food, preschool education, primary health care, immunization, health checkup, and referral services to the children under 6 years of age and their mother. The scheme was launched in 1975, discontinued in 1978 by the government of Morarji Desai, and then relaunched in the 10th 5-year plan. The following are the services sponsored under the ICDS to help achieve the objective: immunization, supplementary nutrition, health checkup, referral services, preschool education, nutrition, and health information. So these are the 6 basic services that is covered under ICDS. Now, service of immunization, health checkup and referral services delivered through public health infrastructure under Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. UNICEF has provided essential supplies for ICDS scheme under ICDS scheme since 1975. World Bank has also assisted with financial and technical support for the program. So we have got Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, UNICEF and World Bank jointly working on ICDS. Now we come to the editorial. But before we start the discussion, it is important to understand a couple of important terminologies and how they operate. The first is liquid mutual fund. What is liquid mutual fund? Liquid fund is a category of mutual fund which invests primarily in money market instruments like certificate of deposit, treasury bills, commercial papers and term deposits. Lower maturity period of these underlying assets help a fund manager in meeting redemption demand from investors. So basically, when you give money to a mutual fund manager, they invest in various instruments including these money market instruments. These are certificate of treasury, certificate of deposit, treasury bills, commercial papers and term deposit. Why? Because say you have invested today and tomorrow somebody else invest, and after some time suddenly you decide to withdraw money. So from where would they get the liquidity? So to maintain the immediate liquidity demand, they invest in these kind of instruments that provides them easy liquidity availability. Otherwise they will have to keep on selling their all the instruments like equity and all. So these are the instruments which are primarily for maintaining the liquidity demand, to cover the liquidity demand situation. Now, what are the benefits of liquid fund? These mutual funds have no lock-in period. So you buy today, sell tomorrow. Withdrawal from liquid funds are processed within 24 hours on business day. The cutoff time of withdrawal is generally 2 p.m. on business day. It means if you place a redemption request by 2 p.m. on the business day, then the fund will be credited to your bank account on the next business day by 10 a.m. Liquid funds have a lowest interest rate risk among debt funds as they primarily invest in fixed income securities with short maturity, that we will see. Liquid funds have no entry load or exit load. This is also important. So if you buy, you don't need to pay. If you sell, again you don't need to pay anything. Now, second part is what is debt security or debt instrument. Debt security refer to a debt instrument such as the government bond, corporate bond, certificate of deposit, municipal bond or preferred stock that can be bought or sold between two parties and has basic terms defined, such as the notional amount, that is amount borrowed, interest rate, at what interest, what are the payment interest term, and the maturity and renewal date. It also include collateralized securities such as collateralized debt obligation CDO, collateralized mortgage obligation, mortgage backed security issued by Government National Mortgage Association, and zero coupon securities. The interest rate on debt securities lies largely determined by the perceived repayment ability of the borrower. High risk of payment default almost always lead to higher interest rate to borrow capital. That's quite based on common sense. As known as fixed income securities, most debt securities are traded over the counter. So you go, you buy and go and sell. Total dollar value of the debt security trade conducted daily is much larger than the stock, as debt securities are held by many big institutional investors as well as government and non-profit organization. Equity security represents a claim on the earning and asset of a corporation. So this is the difference between a debt security and equity security. So when you talk about debt security, this is basically what? It's like kind of loan. You have given a loan. So you get a assured return out of that, and so you are part of the overall loan that they have taken. While if you talk about the equity security, it is basically what you are buying, a part of the company. Say a company worth 1 crore and you have bought 1 lakh security, so you own 1% of the share. So that's the difference. Equity security represents a claim on the earning and asset of the corporation. So you become a part of the company, while debt securities are investment into the debt instrument. For example, a stock is an equity security. You buy, you buy a stock of a company, you buy equity security, while a bond is a debt security. When an investor buy a corporate bond, he is essentially loaning the corporation money, and he has the right to be repaid the principal and the interest on the bond. In contrast, if someone buys a stock from the corporation, he essentially buys the price of the company, so piece of the company. So that is the difference. When you are saying that you have invested in a debt bond, that means you have given a loan to the company on a pre-decided interest rate. So if you have given a loan, say 100 rupee, and interest rate is 5 rupee, so after a year you will be getting 105 rupees and company is bound to pay you. But say if you have bought a stock of a company or equity bond, equity security of 100 rupee, that means you actually would get a share of the earning of the company. And then if say worth of the company is 1 lakh, so you have got 100 rupee. So that basically means that you have bought 1% of the 1% part of the company. That's the difference. Now, what is this mark to market basis valuation? Mark to market basis valuation is a tool that change the value on either side of the balance sheet depending on the condition of the market. For example, stock that an individual holds in his demat account are marked to market every day. This means, whatever you own has got the market repercussion. Share is the best example to understand this. If you own a share of a company, say Reliance Industries, so every day the valuation changes. So we will say that the value of your share is marked to market. So whatever your asset is, if I call it as an asset, so whatever your asset is basically marked to market. So at the time of closing of the market, the price assigned to each stock is the price that buyer buys or sells and decides the end of the day. Many people agree that mark to market reflects the true value of an asset, as it is decided with respect to the current market price. So if say all the 100% share of Reliance Industry is in the market, then asset valuation of Reliance Industry is mark to market. So today if it is 1 lakh crore and tomorrow if it is 1.3 lakh crore, share market goes up and appreciates by 30%, then it is 1.3 lakh crore. So the asset of the company would be said to be mark to market. It can be problematic at times also, as the value of the asset may vary every second due to changing market condition, and because buyer and seller keep coming and going out of in an irregular fashion. In mark to market, problem may occur when the market based measurements do not give the true value of underlying asset because of the perception. So at times, say, recently we have seen a news that Yes Bank's valuation eroded. That was just because of the perception. Or if we say any company and there some rumor comes and suddenly the market value collapses, so that would not reflect the right value of the asset. But still, since it is marked to the market, valuation would fluctuate. Now, the other term is what is amortization based valuation. An amortized bond is the one which is in which the principal, that is the face value on the debt, is paid down regularly along with its interest expense over the life of the bond. The best way to understand this is when you take a loan on your car. So say you've taken a loan of 7 lakh rupee and then interest rate of 12%, and say you have taken for 5 years, so it is amortized for 5 years, and whatever value comes you pay in equal amount. That's called the amortization based valuation. Now we come back to the article. What author believes? SEBI's new rule to protect those investing in liquid mutual fund are not tight enough. So what actually SEBI has proposed? According to a new regulation issued by Security and Exchange Board of India (SEBI), liquid mutual fund holding debt securities with a maturity term of more than 30 days will have to be valued this security on the mark-to-market basis. I told you that these fund managers park some of their money on these liquid mutual funds so that they maintain their liquidity requirement, and that means they could maintain the cash requirement so that if some customer try to liquidate his bond or the mutual fund, could be paid immediately. So now SEBI is saying that if you have invested in liquid mutual fund, for the fund managers, if its maturity is more than 30 days, then its valuation has to be on mark-to-market basis. Now, until now, liquid mutual fund could report the value of the debt instrument with a maturity term up to 60 days. Now it is 30 days. So up till now, all the debt instrument with a maturity term up to 60 days using the amortization basis valuation method. So now it is changed to mark-to-market basis. Only debt securities with maturity term over 60 days were to be valued by mark-to-market basis. So from here the situation is changed to this. Earlier up till 60 days you had to use, you were free to use amortization based valuation method, and beyond 60 days it was mark-to-market basis. Now the time frame has been reduced. So now any bond, liquid mutual fund which has got the maturity term more than 30 days has to be evaluated based on mark-to-market basis. So that term 60 days has been reduced to 30 days. So the new rules seemingly narrow the scope of amortization based valuation. Naturally, earlier up till 60 days it was amortization based. Now it is only up to 30 days. So amortization based valuation, which is completely detached from the market price, as I told you, of the securities being valued, allowed mutual fund to avoid volatility associated with the mark-to-market valuation. SEBI's new rule come in the midst of crisis of ILFS that led to various fund managers reporting the value of the same debt instrument issued by the infrastructure lender at a vastly different level. This is the main reason why SEBI jumped and changed the rule. ILFS issued a bond and that was bought by various companies, and all used different methodology to project or to hedge the risk. So whatever best suited to them, they used the method. So somebody used mark-to-market, somebody used amortization based valuation, and because of that the structure, the valuation was vastly different. That's what it is saying, that various fund managers reported the value of the same debt instrument, that is the bond, debt bond issued by ILFS, at a vastly different level. So definitely if you use a mark-to-market, your valuation would fluctuate. So if you have got a strong base, you probably would be using mark-to-market. If you got slightly weaker position, you'll use amortization based. I'm just saying, I'm not saying this is what done by companies. All I'm trying to explain you. So the chief financial market regulator, that is SEBI, believes that mandating mutual funds to report the value of the greater share of their holding on a mark-to-market basis can lead to a better and more objective valuation of the security. So basically SEBI has reduced the time frame to 30 days, that beyond 30 days you will have to follow mark-to-market basis, so that SEBI could get the clear picture of the financial of these funds. Now, how author sees it? By exempting securities with a maturity period of up to 30 days from mark-to-market valuation, SEBI may be doing no favor to the individual investor. Why? This is because the new SEBI rule gives a strong incentive for liquid mutual fund to invest more of their fund under management in the securities with maturity period fewer than 30 days. So basically the author is saying that now say this particular change proposed by SEBI would force or would prompt mutual fund managers to invest in those liquid mutual fund which has got maturity less than 30 days, so that they could pursue that amortization based valuation method. Now this helps avoid volatility in the mark to market accounting and need to provide a fair account of valuation of their investment. So basically the author is saying the return definitely would be less. So in a way you are harming the individual investor. So you are not doing any favor. How would it impact investors? What is likely is a decrease in the yield received on securities maturing in 30 days or less. Naturally, if your maturity period is less, your return would also be less. Ultimately, who would get impacted? The individual investor. And an increase in the yield on debt instrument with maturity period between 31 to 60 days. It will, however, do nothing to make investors and mutual fund become more informed about the real value of their investment. So naturally, investor would not be aware about what methods are used. So investor is not going to get benefited anything out of it. And then the author is citing the paradox. What SEBI does. So latest SEBI rules are also in direct contrast to the usual accounting practice when it comes to valuation of securities. Generally accepted accounting principle mandates securities with least maturity to be reported on a mark-to-market basis, while they allowing the amortization-based method to be employed on the value other security with longer maturity period. So here it is a contrast. What SEBI is following for the securities is completely in contrast with what is been asked to the mutual fund investor to follow. Now what author suggests? This makes sense as the profit and loss associated with securities with shorter terms are closer to being realized by investor when compared to the long-term securities. So SEBI would do well to mandate that all instruments made by liquid fund managers, liquid mutual fund, should be valued on mark-to-market basis. This is what the author is suggesting, that make it mark-to-market basis. Simultaneously, it should work on deepening liquidity in the bond market so that bond market prices can serve as a ready reference to ascertain the value of a various debt security. This is quite an important point. What author is saying that you don't keep a different time frame. You make it mandatory that all liquid mutual fund has to be valued on a mark-to-market basis. So this will ultimately what? This will become an indicator to the market, an indicator to the stability or the real valuation of the debt securities. So that way, immediately SEBI would be able to identify as which company is not performing well or which company's base is not good based on the real valuation of the debt securities issued by that company. So say if ILFS has issued a debt security and if it is valued only on mark-to-market basis, SEBI would have come to know about its stability long before the crisis. But SEBI could not detect the stability of ILFS debt security because various platforms or various mutual fund managers were using different methods. Some were using mark-to-market, some were using amortization based and other methods. So everybody was trying to project it in a best picture what was suited to them. So very good article for you to understand. Now we move to the next article, that is a fight for the forest. To stay offer only a temporary relief, but it provided an opportunity to figure out how conservation movement can advocate both nature and social justice in India. So basically author is talking about the FRA and then recent stay that was granted by Honorable Supreme Court. This is yet another article, and we all know that Supreme Court had asked to evacuate all those other than forest dwellers who could not establish their claim out of forest area. Then central government approached Supreme Court and apprised that that happened because of the lack of, probably the lack of knowledge of rules among other than forest dwellers and Panchayat Samiti who was actually evaluating the claim, and maybe state government could not do it. Then there was another article that I had briefed you, that had contended that probably state government also does not want to get these claims established, because then it would become really tough for them to evacuate those people out of the forest area for establishing big or mega projects. And then there were a couple of examples of cement factory and bauxite factory also that I had given. So this is in continuation. You can take this article in continuation. So what is the contention of the author? There is a lack of peer review studies that qualify the extent of deforestation caused by the marginalized community in comparison to the large industrial and infrastructure projects. So author is saying there is no review. I mean, if you have got a contention that these other than forest dwellers who could not establish their claim are the one causing deforestation and causing harm to forest area, then there should be a vis-a-vis parallel review or study to see who has done more damage, large industrial or infrastructure project or these forest dwellers. So it further says that it is vital that the scientists and conservationists take up this task, as it is well known that the state is bestowing large companies with kindness and second chance despite severe legal violation during planning, construction and operation stages of the project. Objections to the FRA are often framed as an issue of wildlife conservation versus people's right, with no mention of these big players who might benefit from this framing. So what the author is saying, that those who have approached Supreme Court for the evacuation of this forest dweller have always tried to see the picture that wildlife conservation is getting hampered because of illegal dwelling of this other than forest dwellers, but they never talk about big players, big industrial players who actually are probably getting more benefit out of this scheme. Now author is saying that there may be case of mala fide intention. In 2006, well before the FRA implementation started, Environmental Ministry directed state government to declare all existing protected areas as critical tiger habitat. So immediately, the moment you declare it as critical tiger habitat, it will not come under FRA. And then how government manipulated this particular action? In 2012, ministry tried to remove critical tiger habitat from the purview of the National Board for Wildlife, purportedly to make diversion of forest land easier. So once it is out of the purview of FRA, it will be easier for the government to divert the land for industrial projects. Indeed, one must repeatedly question who gets access to forest when forest dwellers are evicted. In January, Environmental Ministry cancelled community forest right given to Adivasi communities in Chhattisgarh, Hasdev Arand forest, and handed over 2000 acres of this forest to coal mining company. So this is what author is trying to highlight, that probably government is not active. I mean, state governments are also not active in helping those other than forest dwellers who could not establish their claim, or forest dwellers who could not establish their claim, because government probably also have got a mala fide intention that the moment those people are out, that those land would be free and these land may be diverted to industrial big industries. So what is author's verdict? The court's original eviction order had the potential to perpetrate such injustice. There are serious concerns about rejection process, unfamiliarity with the language of FRA and outdated forest map. Ministry of Tribal Affairs had been urging district administration to assist the process for granting right to by making maps and other data available to protect application from exploitation. The eviction order would not only have alienated marginalized people from their lands but made wildlife conservation a symbol of oppressive state. So basically the author is trying to say that by doing this you're not doing any favor to the conservation, wildlife conservation. Rather, this eviction would actually mark as the operation towards those who are trying actually to conserve the forest. If conservation calls for a restriction of human activity in some way, that sacrifice must be made, except where doing so would result in injustice, especially to the most marginalized communities. So basically the author is trying to say that these people are not the one harming the forest. Rather, big projects are the one harming, and probably state is not in favor of these people and is trying to favor big ticket people. Now the next article, wind energy capacity expansion to slow in next 5 years. This is what data from CRISIL says. This is a private study, but still can be used in mains, because we can very well formulate our own thought regarding wind power. So let's try to understand what this article says. Capacity addition in the wind energy sector will slow down over fiscal 2019 to 23. Why? With only 14 to 16 gigawatt being added due to the decline in bid response and profitability of the original equipment manufacturer, according to the report by CRISIL. Let's try to see why. The shift in the competitive bidding mechanism had slowed industry growth due to a significant fall in tariff, triggering a decline in both bid response and profitability of original equipment manufacturer. The shift to the competitive bidding mechanism in the wind energy sector has resulted in a tariff falling to 2.4 to 2.6 rupee per unit from 4 to 4.5 rupee per unit under the feed-in tariff regime. So actually this has reduced, which actually is not yielding much return. So according to CRISIL, slow realization are unviable for entire value chain at current capital cost of 6.8 to 7.2 crore per megawatt. So what the study of CRISIL says that the investment required is 6.8 to 7.2 crore per megawatt in solar power plant, and the return that you are getting is only 2.4 to 2.6 rupee per unit. It makes the complete value chain unviable. I mean, the operator and the original equipment manufacturer, everybody. Had this been 4 to 4.5 rupee per unit, this probably would have been sustainable. So state auctioning on the other hand has showed that several states have signed power supply agreement with Power Transmission Corporation and ACCI to procure wind power under the scheme auctioned by them to help fulfill their non-solar renewable purchase obligation target, according to the CRISIL research. So basically what is the study says that right now the cost per unit, per unit production cost is higher than what larger mass or what government is ready to pay. Next, draft e-commerce policy, more time sought for comment. You all are aware that there is a draft e-commerce policy. We'll see that in brief, but let's see what is the news. 9th March was the last day for submission of comments from the parties, from the companies. The news says the government has released the draft proposing setting up of a legal and technical framework for restriction on cross-border data flow, and also laid out condition for business regarding collection and processing of sensitive data locally and storing in abroad. The draft was formulated by the Department of Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, DPIIT. It seeks to provide for consideration and discussion a policy framework that will enable the country to benefit from rapid digitization of the domestic as well as global economy. Well, 9th March was the last date. So companies have requested for extension of the date because they have not yet submitted their concern and their suggestions. So let's try to understand what are the main features of this draft e-commerce policy, so that when the actual policy comes in, we would be able to see how it deviated and what are the features. So draft e-commerce policy key provisions: data localization measures. Companies such as Amazon, Facebook, Google that generate user data through e-commerce platforms, social media and search engine have to store data exclusively in India. This is quite an important point, and that's what probably has uh, prompted America to mark sanction on India. That news that had come yesterday. The government to have access to the data stored in India for the national security and public policy subject to the privacy and consensual rule. Government to incentivize domestic data storage in India, provide data infrastructure, make domestic data storage economically attractive. So what is India first measure? Limited inventory based B2C, business to customer model, for online sale of locally produced good to be allowed as long as the made in India product are sold on the platform. The founder or the promoter is a resident Indian. This is the second provision. The company is controlled by Indian management and foreign equity does not exceed 49%. The government to promote domestic business through preferential treatment for digital products created within India and custom duty on electronic transmission. Next provision: measures to support MSMEs. There are several recommendations meant to boost MSMEs, such as establishing an e-commerce retail platform in public-private partnership mode exclusively for MSMEs, vendors and suppliers, implementing pilot initiative for online sale of product from small industry clusters such as Moradabad, Ludhiana, Aurangabad and Merit. Re-examining the TCS provision in GST, which imposes additional burden on SMEs. So these are for MSMEs. Measures on Press Note 3. You all know that Press Note 3 is related to FDI. Government to create a separate wing of Directorate of Enforcement to handle grievances related to implementation of Press Note 3. The curb on not able to influence prices to be extended to group companies of the e-commerce marketplace. This is likely to have an impact on companies like Amazon, since it holds a stake in some of its seller entity. That yesterday I had made a separate video and I had told you that there is a company called Cloudtail in which Amazon holds a stock, and that particular entity actually controls the stock and then it sells to other vendor, and which subsequently get listed on Amazon and sell to customer, which is not actually allowed. Deep discount to be phased out, as government proposes to introduce a sunset clause for differential pricing strategy. For example, deep discount. This will impact customer of platforms such as Flipkart and Amazon, because these companies give lots of deep discount. So if you want to give discount, you should extend it to all your vendors. It should a particular vendor should not get a preferential treatment. So if in case you want to extend discount, you should extend it to all vendors. Furthermore, actually government is not interested in allowing to give deep discounts because it is hurting the brick and mortar stores spread all across the country, because they would not be able to extend discounts, while these big companies, because of their huge funding, can very well sustain on that. So basically by giving deep discount, they are trying to erode they are trying to wipe out all these brick and mortar stores. How will the sector be regulated? A single legislation will address all aspects of e-commerce industry. A single regulator would be set up to consider an issue such as FDI implementation issues, consumer protection issues, among others. More scrutiny of mergers and acquisitions that may distort competition. Competition Commission of India will examine entry barriers and anti-competitive practice. So basically there should not be, Competition Commission of India would be interested with the responsibility to look into all kind of mergers and acquisition which can distort competition. So say tomorrow if
Flipkart and Amazon merges, then it will become the only uh, it would become a giant e-commerce marketplace, and then it can easily wipe out other players, like small players like Shopclues or Paytm. So basically this kind of mergers would be taken reviewed or scrutinized by Competition Commission of India. This assumes significance in the light of recent acquisition of Flipkart by Walmart, and then something more can happen. How will payment be monitored? A centralized agency for KYC data to be set up to reduce the KYC cost for individual operators and burden on the customer. A social credit database to be set up through PPP to facilitate digital lending. So this was all related to your e-commerce draft policy on e-commerce marketplace. Let's see what comes up finally. Now at page 14, IRDAI NHA form joint working group on Ayushman Bharat. So Ayushman Bharat is basically health insurance scheme, and now a joint working group is formed to actually make it operationalized. So this group would actually study and provide provisions, suggestions, which actually would help in operationalize this scheme. A joint working group comprising of senior officials from IRDAI and National Health Insurance Agency has been formed to recommend measures to help improve the implementation of center's Ayushman Bharat Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, or the health insurance scheme for the poor. The 11-member group of NHA Deputy CEO Sri Dinesh Arora as the chairperson and IRDAI Executive Director Sri Suresh Mathur as a co-chair would submit a report on various aspects pertaining to the network hospitals management, data standardization and exchange, fraud, abuse and control, and common IT infrastructure for health insurance claim management. Spelling out, plan is there. So you are going to extend this facility and you will be giving 5 lakh rupee as health insurance. But in which all hospital can these people go? Which all hospitals should be brought into the panel of this Jan Arogya Yojana? And what are the facilities that should be there in those hospitals? How would the patient approach to the hospital? How would the payment be operationalized? In case the patient pays on his own pocket, how would he get back his money? So these are many issues that is to be operationalized, and for that a detailed framework is needed, and for that this working group is formed. So spelling out the term of reference, the Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority IRDAI said under network hospitals management, and this is what I was talking about, the group had 12 months to submit its report on National Repository of impaneled hospitals. So first they will have to find out which all hospitals are eligible to extend facility and which all hospitals should be taken on the panel. Based on their facility that they have, the kind of doctor they have, the kind of ambulances and operation theater, medicine, everything. So based on that, this group would actually give suggestion on what all facilities those hospitals should have, and based on the desired facility, which all hospital satisfy those criteria, and whether these hospitals are ready to get impaneled or not, and then how would the payment be done and how would the facility would be extended, whether there is any fraud or not, and how to identify the right targeted patient. So the JWG would define hospital infrastructure and facility audits, and to understand capacity of the hospital as well as the speciality available, and chalk out roadmap for one common list of accredited verified hospital for entire industry. Now the last article that we have, Toyota Japan Space Agency plan Moon mission. And what is this? Toyota is teaming up with Japan's Space Agency on a planned mission on moon. Now everybody is going to the moon. With Japanese auto giant expected to develop a lunar rover, officials and the local media said on Wednesday. It will be the car manufacturer's first full-fledged entry into space exploration after the company jointly developed a robot sent to the International Space Station. So earlier Toyota has done this. GG Press news agency said the car giant is expected to jointly develop a mobility method to be used on the lunar surface for the mission. So far, only Russia, United States, and China have made the 3,084,000 kilometer journey and landed spacecraft on the moon that we all have seen. Last month, Israel launched a spacecraft that aims to join them. In 2017, Japan revealed plan to put an astronaut on the moon around 2030. So Israel has already sent three countries have already gone. Israel maybe would be the fourth, and then we have got India. India is also interested, and Japan is now in the race. So before humans set foot on the lunar surface again, NASA aims to land an unmanned vehicle on the moon by 2024. Lot many data, everything is important for your prelims as well as mains. So this is all for I had for today. Thank you very much.